Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn, and I'm thrilled to have with us today Philippe de Ridder. He is the founder and CEO of Board of Innovation, an innovation services company that's grown rapidly over the last couple of years. Philippe, it's wonderful having you here.
Yeah, good morning. Hello.
So, Philippe, for people who don't know about you or your history, can you give us a brief background as to how you and your company got started in innovation?
Yes, of course. So I started together with Nick, my co-founder, about 10 years ago, as we were extremely passionate about how business models were changing entire industries at that moment in time. So that was a moment where iTunes just revolutionized the music industry, and Spotify was just coming up, and talks about innovation were primarily about technology and product. So we developed a methodology around how to visually map out business models, how to recognize patterns across industry, and how you could, for example, copy a business model from automotive industry like automotive leasing and implement that in the chemicals industry, and how to design a model around chemical leasing, which is also more environmentally friendly. So that's basically the roots of Board of Innovation, developing that methodology, launching a website around that, and that then developed into the company it is today.
And where are you guys based?
We're originally based out of Antwerp, but we're currently servicing our clients globally. So we have offices in New York, in Amsterdam and Antwerp for Europe, and in Singapore.
I mean, I know you guys opened up an office in New York recently. They're really struggling with the coronavirus epidemic right now. You and I had a brief discussion beforehand about some research that you guys and some thought pieces that you guys had on what the impact of this whole pandemic might be on companies. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, a good point. So we've gathered our thinking with Board of Innovation around that topic, as I think obviously everyone at the moment is currently focused on the health crisis, which is the number one priority, to get that solved. But our belief is that this is going to have a long-term impact. So we believe it's going to fundamentally change our society as well as our economy. We have coined it as the low-touch economy, which is going to be here for the next 3 years, in our belief. Because, when you look at this as a company, you obviously need to scenario plan this. Is this a half-year problem? Then we can just push through, maybe based on the cash and financial strength that we have, and then return back to normal. Or is this a longer-term issue, 18 months or 3 years? And I think the current statistics, which obviously go up and down every day, rather support the 18 months to 3 years scenario, given the fact that the current lockdowns might solve the initial issue of the health crisis. But as, for example, the study of Imperial College also pointed out, this is not going to solve it entirely, and we might have an upswing of those type of measures for the coming 18 months, which results in a lot of new consumer habits. And if consumers or people in general adopt new habits for a period of 1 year or 18 months, they will obviously just become habits and sustain for a much longer time. So I think it's gonna change the way we live, the way we shop, the way we eat, exercise, work, and so on, in a way that we shouldn't underestimate. And hence, as well, if you scenario plan this as a company, I think we shouldn't look at it as a short-term problem where we just push through and return back to normal. We should scenario plan on how this is going to change the way our customers behave, society changes in general, and obviously economic changes on the back of that as well. And then pivot our core business with regards to that.
I mean, everyone,
So,
yeah, I think everyone agrees
yeah.
that there's going to be changes. But what sort of changes do you anticipate? What are these habits of tomorrow that are going to be different from how people were used to doing things up until 2019?
Yes, good question. I think the current behaviors that you see in the lockdowns that we see across the world, or less strict versions of that, will actually continue for a much longer time than we currently anticipate. We don't know yet what the rhythm of those lockdown type of measures will be, but I don't think there will be any like large gatherings of people in a lot of countries for the foreseeable future. I don't think there's going to be a lot of travel, not a lot of tourism. I don't think there's going to be a lot of physical human interaction. So those are the first order consequences, let's say. And those obviously lead to a lot of second order consequences, which might impact a lot of companies in the end as well, further down the value chain. For example, if restaurants and bars are not going to be open for a considerable period in the coming 18 months, yeah, then obviously a lot of people will consume less alcohol in those establishments, just to give one example. So I think a lot of people and organizations are still considering this too much as a short-term issue, whereas I would look at the current changes in behavior, and there's already first research out of China, for example, on how it impacts buying across different categories. And I would use that as the base case scenario to look at, okay, this might be the changes in behavior across the next 80 months, where a lot of postponable purchases will probably not happen. Then on the back of that, obviously there's a lot of other second order consequences. For example, I think we can expect definitely, as you already seen the first research around that, huge issues around mental health, anxiousness, loneliness, depression. So that is definitely something we should be very aware of and try to solve or support people in. I think we might see a two-sided society in a way that probably in the foreseeable future we will have immune tests. So some people will be certified as an immune customer, where you will be free to walk around, nobody needs to be scared of you, and so on. So you can expect probably services targeting specifically those immune customers. And yeah, like there are 10 to 20 second order consequences that we have mapped out in a mind map, which is freely available, and we can share also with the viewers of this talk if you want, of all the potential changes that we see happening in consumer behavior.
I mean, that's fascinating. I probably have some slightly different views on other scenarios that might happen.
Yes.
I think, for example, other scenarios might be that the moment that the lockdown officially ends, people have all this pent up passion and human emotion that they want to start getting into big groups as soon as possible. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of sort of interesting research about how people react to what's happened here.
I agree that is going to be the human instinct for a part of society, or at least that's my take on it, because we are awaiting research to really know. I think the other part is going to be more risk averse and not participate in those. But I think in terms of the health control measurements in a lot of countries are not going to allow the large gatherings. So it's more I think from a government control or health regulation perspective, that I think a lot of things will not be allowed in order to continue to control the pandemic until we reach the point of a vaccine in 1.5 years, or herd immunity, whatever gets us there first, to the point where 60 to 70% of the whole population is immune, which is the trigger point for a viral infection like this not to freely wander around society.
So let's talk about companies that might be one stage removed from the pandemic. There's obviously going to be companies like airlines and hospital systems and government agencies that are really having all of their focus and strategy on dealing with this pandemic. But then there's the companies that are, as you say, affected by people and the changes of behavior. What sort of innovation strategy or discussions or scenario planning should these companies be going through to see how they, first of all, outlast this, and then at the end, maybe even come out stronger at the other end?
Yes, good point. So in terms of scenario planning, we've developed a model that we're using with our clients, where on the one hand, you need to scenario plan the severity and the duration of the economic impact of all of this. So is it going to be a V curve rebound, half a year impact? Is it going to be a U curve, 1.5 years of impact, where, for example, social distance measurements are prolonged, but the economic stimulus from central banks and governments is going to ease the damage? Or is it an L curve recovery, which is going to take us 3 years to return back to normal, where we haven't managed to manage the pandemic, and the economic stimulus falls short, and we see widespread bankruptcies and credit defaults in general? Obviously, there's a lot of nuances within those scenarios, but let's consider those as the 3 broad scenarios. And then obviously on the other aspect, you need to look at what impact does it have on my organization. Is it positive? Do I see a revenue growth through a demand surge, for example, in e-commerce type of companies? This is going to be the smaller amount of the whole spectrum. Is it mildly negative? Am I impacted between 0 to 15% of my revenue loss for the next quarters? Is it severe? Is it between 15 to 50%, or is it catastrophic over 50%? In the latter, obviously, you have organizations that are indeed in tourism, as you already mentioned. So if you establish like what's the base case economic scenario that we plan for, or multiple ones, and what is the impact on my organization, that's a good first starting point to define your company's strategy. So let's, for example, assume you're not in the catastrophic department, as you mentioned, but the impact is still either mildly negative or severe. Let's say you're in automotive, for example, and you have a product which is postponable. I can postpone my purchase of a new car to next year in a lot of instances. And it's not top of mind now for me to buy a new car within this pandemic, and probably not for the next year to come. So you might be severely impacted by it as a second order consequence of this. Let's say you base case plan for a 1.5 year impact. So that would bring you to a strategy of trying to pivot your offer through organic or innovation or inorganic growth. If your organization is impacted less, for example, in other type of consumer goods, which might take up again in a couple of months from now, strategy would be more around defending and trying to improve competitive positioning within your market segment. And obviously, if you have business units or products or offerings more in who have an over 50% impact in terms of revenue loss, and if your cost base can't scale flexibly with that, you should also consider a divestment strategy for those business units in your portfolio. So there's a multitude, obviously, of variables, scenarios, and as such, strategies as well to adopt within that.
Speaking of industries that have changed over the last couple of years, you and I are obviously in the same industry. We're in the innovation services, innovation advisory business. And for people who haven't actually heard of Board of Innovation or been to their website, one thing which I'm really sort of envious of you guys, because you do really, really well, is you're one of the first companies that really started putting templates and frameworks out there for people to use broadly on the internet. What was your thinking behind doing things differently in the industry, and what do you think are the trends or necessary trends that we're going to see from innovation and innovation advisory?
Yes, thank you for the kind words, and I'm happy to hear that the tools that we are sharing are valuable to you. And by the way, all the tools that I've just spoken about, the mind map of the societal shifts, as well as the strategy matrix to scenario plan your strategy amidst COVID-19 and post-COVID, are also freely available on our website as part of that. And that's always been part of our DNA. So our bigger term mission is to inspire 100 million people to innovate for a better tomorrow. So all of our thinking and tools we freely share for everyone to use. That's our longer term mission. Then on the second part of your question, how does our own industry need to change? I think quite drastically. Already beginning of this year, I put out an opinion piece saying 50% of our corporate service, corporate innovation service provider story won't be there anymore in 2 to 3 years from now. And I think the current crisis only accelerates that. So why do I think that? Is on the one hand, obviously now it's been accelerated by an economic recession, more than likely. Secondly, I think we've seen a lot of innovation hype, innovation theater, which is just going to be cancelled entirely. Companies are obviously just demanding impact from innovation, bottom line impact for them. And in the current situation, this is only going to be much more the case. It's going to be about pivoting your core business, not about nice to have experiments in the margin of what we are currently doing. And I'm very curious to see on who's going to own the innovation for the coming years, because I'm a strong believer that it needs to happen in the core business of clients and adjacent to that. So is it going to be owned by a chief innovation office, or is it going to be owned by the general managers of the business units and categories within the core business? That's going to be an interesting dynamic to see, and also for service providers on who they are typically servicing. Are you servicing a chief innovation office, or are you servicing a general manager of a business unit that needs to pivot his or her core business? So in general, to summarize, I think there's going to be a lot less of us. And obviously, as Board of Innovation, we hope to still be there at the other end of this, although we have no guarantees for that like anyone else. But I think there's going to be a great filtering out of corporate innovation service providers in the next 2 to 3 years.
I agree. I mean, what I've seen as well over the last couple of years is there's a bit of fatigue around this concept of let's get in an innovation speaker and try and motivate people to do innovation, because it's basically accepted now that innovation is positive, it's good, it's hard. And a lot of the messages that were really quite popular about 5 years ago, everyone gets them now. So what I see happening is the companies that are going to die out are the ones that effectively do one-off workshops to teach people about brainstorming and design thinking. Yes. The ones that are going to stay are the ones that help companies implement frameworks and actually guide them through transformation. So how is your company sort of strategically focusing its efforts for the next couple of years to make sure you're in the right place?
Good question. So we see ourselves as a strategy and business design firm. So also stepping away from just purely looking at it as innovation, because I think, for example, what innovation lacks is a lot of the corporate strategic thinking. A lot of innovation has been innovation for the sake of innovation, where obviously it's only valuable if it really fits within the corporate strategy and if it can also weigh in on forming that corporate strategy agenda. So we're deepening that a lot more with our clients on the real strategic work, such as, for example, now helping our clients navigate this crisis as well, scenario plan, forming the strategy around that. I think that is an essential piece. And then the second part is business design, and that is indeed on actually making it happen, building that new product, generating that new business model, testing that in the market, actually launching that until it has a bottom line impact for clients. And as a third point to that, much more focused on servicing core business innovation. So helping that general manager that has an innovation KPI in his annual KPIs as well, rather than just being focused on an innovation department if they don't have the mandate to innovate for the core business of the organization.
Fantastic. Philippe, it's been wonderful speaking with you. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of years now. It's amazing how sometimes a crisis is what it takes to bring people together. If people want to find out, if people want to find out more about Board of Innovation, your work, your thought pieces, and all these wonderful templates we've been talking about, what's the best place they can do that?
Go to boardofinnovation.com. And there's a whole new section on the low-touch economy and our perspectives on that, as well as including all the tools that I mentioned during this talk. So go to boardofinnovation.com and download all the tools that could be useful to you.
Perfect. I'll make sure to get those links down in the description below. It's been wonderful having you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Yes, great.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders, and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they are backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.